Hey, and welcome to the Reset Podcast. Everything you need to know that your therapist probably never told you. Researched by experts, real life experiences. This is Reset. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Reset Podcast. We are so glad that you are here. I'm recovering from laryngitis. If my voice sounds a little funky, that's why.
I kind of like it.
So something funny happened the other day, as in yesterday. Our kids are starting to understand what therapy is because they asked Dad about his job. So they know what therapy is. Now at this point, I see my therapist probably once a month-ish, and I had an appointment yesterday via Zoom. So I told my kids, hey, I'm going to go have my appointment upstairs. You guys play quietly downstairs. And my daughter looks at me and she goes, Mom, why don't you just pay Dad to be your therapist?
You can't afford me.
And that's exactly what I said. I was like, that's a great question. I'm like, well, sometimes we just need somebody from the outside, like somebody else to talk to. So anyway, I was with my therapist yesterday. For me, a struggle lately has been parenting, and I've talked a little bit about my struggles with perfectionism in a way I didn't understand. I used to think perfectionism was just, your art project had to look perfect, your paper had to be perfect in school, but it can also be the way that I am perceived by other people. I want to be a good picture of who I am. And that has trickled into parenting for me, where I started to think to myself, am I parenting my child because I am really looking at them and wanting their character, their heart, and their mind to be healthy and solid? Or am I sometimes parenting because I am so worried about what somebody else is thinking about me as I'm parenting, and or how my child behaves with me and without me? I don't know if anyone else struggles with this, but whenever we struggle with something, we have to tell ourselves, most likely we're not the only one. And so a lot of my session was talking about, how do I release this guilt and shame I have from I feel inadequate to be his mom or her mom, or I feel embarrassed of my child. I feel guilty sometimes for thinking, I don't want this child. I didn't sign up for this. This is too hard. How do we go through processing that in a healthy way and realizing our jobs are to be there for our kids and hope that they grow up into these healthy, functioning adults? Our parenting shouldn't be based on what people are perceiving us as people and parents.
Well, I think this is an internal conflict or internal battle we all have as parents, which is the perception that we want to give through our kids' behaviors, our kids' choices, even our kids' just, accolades. And so much, it's easy to, in so many ways, take on a child who, aptitude is so high, successes are so great. And, because we're proud of that. But then that sense of proudness as a parent, as an individual, goes away when your kid kind of acts like a dinosaur at play dates at age 10, which we've seen that many times.
Maybe doesn't even want to play with the kids at a play date.
Well,
runs away from the children.
I'll blame that on me. I introduced him to Jurassic Park at way too young of an age, obviously. And so how quickly that goes away. And so then you get this aspect of, like, as a parent, this external locus of control, the concept in which outward or external behaviors of others or words really control how you think, feel, and define your value as a role. In this case, it'd be like a parent versus like your internal locus of control, which is your belief system, your core values, really defines, who you are in that role. But it's hard not to. It's hard not to over-identify with your kids' decision makings at any age and over-identify with how they act and respond, to other kids. I know for us, I think we're, the moments in which we over-identify is when we overreact. And no doubt, I think for us, we react when they aren't good friends or not good with guests. Guest gets best, as we know. And they make decisions, relationally that totally go against how we treat them or stuff we talk about. So that's when it's hard. When you impart value, wisdom, speak into it.
Take the time to actually,
talk about it, model it, and then it's game time. And they decide to go rogue on you. And so that's when it's hard. And I just think about how Freud talks about is everyone, we all react through different levels of anxiety. And that's like the unhealthy version of ourselves that we respond to different unresolved anxieties or whatever it may be. So, where does that really come from us? Is the aspect of, we're kind of like overachievers, let's say, and the aspect of achieving even comes in our role as a parent. So when our kid doesn't want to overachieve or desire to achieve, then that creates anxiety in us. Is the aspect of, perfectionism that's actually driving the anxiety that makes us kind of over-identify with our kids. And so you kind of get into this like aspect of just our own existentialism around parenting and our children. And you realize sometimes it's just we lose the aspect of where's the fun at with our kids, where's to allow them to make the mistakes, grow, and we lose it just because it is frustrating to be a parent.
Yeah, and I've never thought of that, to be honest, as you were speaking right now, the anxiety that we personally feel. And one of the biggest things I am is a peacemaker, and I want everybody to get along, everybody to be happy, everybody just to be included, all those things. My highest anxiety point is when, one of our kids is not including everybody or is not realizing the situation around them. That for me, for sure, then I feel afraid that people are like, why is your kid doing this? That kind of a thing. So that's an interesting thing for us to all think about. What is it about us that is going to trigger that anxiety? What part of our own anxiety when we see in our kids? Just to be aware of it. That's a great thing to think about. Perfectionism, a peacemaker, overachiever, whatever it is. Really think about that so then you cannot overreact and handle that situation in an appropriate way, because I always have to tell myself they are different than me. They have no matter how well we do the nurturing part, they still have their own minds, their own hearts, their own souls. They are their own individuals. And so that's something I have to constantly remind myself of.
In many ways, too, it's like parenting is also could be in a constant season of grieving, just grieving your kids' choices or grieving your kids' decisions or things like that. I think the concept in which, I constantly, and I say this out loud, even with us, is, look, we've had our childhood. Let our kids have theirs. We've had our mistakes. We had our decision-making around what we want to get into, not get into. Like one of the biggest pivots for us was, we're so into sports and we love sports or grew up playing sports, multiple sports. It's a big part of our life, big part of our free time watching sports. And so you just kind of assume that's going to be kind of your lifestyle with children. And then you realize your son's not into sports. Then you're like, well, I really want you to play sports. But I'm like, why do I want you to play sports? Because I want you to play sports, because I enjoy relating through a sport, because it's something that comes natural for me as a parent, as a person. And so that was something that we had to pivot and really lean into. This is his childhood. If he wants his childhood to be evolved around fishing, camping, wildlife, horseback riding, everything that really, it's so foreign to me as a person, I just got to remind myself that's what he's into. The days of, playing with Transformers and G.I. Joes has now been replaced with science projects and experiments and losing my tools. But that's something that we had to pivot quickly because we were behind that. And sometimes we just got to meet our kids where they're at. But what's keeping us from understanding that, seeing that, was once again over-identifying, feeling anxious and nervous. Because I think it's so easy in our culture. It's like, what's the goal in parenting? What's a successful parenting job look like in our culture? One in which you raise a child who gets great grades. They end up having a girlfriend or a boyfriend. They maybe get a job. They get a scholarship or get into a college. They graduate from college, have a great career. There's all these successes that go into it. And when the person doesn't fit in that, since the definition of success, it's very anxiety provoking as a parent. So we try to, step them back into that, and so it's interesting to see as a parent to allow your kid to evolve into who really, God made them to be, and to allow them to, and for us to really lean in and try to put gas on that fire for them and things that they're naturally into.
Absolutely. And just realizing that they can learn all of those character building things through different avenues. Because I think for a long time we were thinking you have to play sports because you have to know how it is to get along with the team and all these things, and realizing, okay, how then do we do that in the other areas that our kids are interested in? I think that was another thing that we were trying to force. Why we were trying to force what we loved and what we knew was, but they have to know how to get along in a team situation and all these things, and just being more creative, thinking more outside the box.
This is the part of our show where we talk about our opinions on the things that we observe. Observe and then respond, don't worry, you cannot be wrong. It's all about the way that your mind works. Observation feedback.
Have you ever been to a softball game when it comes to adult leagues?
Are you talking about my old man softball team?
Maybe. Yes. Guilty.
You went to your first game.
I did.
You were impressed, weren't you?
I was so impressed, and I got to go home with one of the winners. So it's pretty cool. So Joe has played baseball his whole life and then played softball like in his 20s, and then you stopped. Like we got married, all that kind of stuff.
I retired.
He retired. One of our good friends here got him out of retirement this year, and he is now on a softball team, and their legit name and uniforms. They are the Old Man Softball
Team. And I am the oldest man on the team. It's
Are you
official.
really?
I am. So I went from like the youngest back in my 20s to now the oldest. But let me tell you something. I feel like I still got it.
My friend and I, whose husbands are on the team, were watching, and she made this good point that there are a couple players on there you can tell have played baseball. You and some other guy have just like really pretty form, she was saying. Like the way you catch it, the way you throw it, it's like that muscle memory. So you do look good out there. No matter what age you are, when you are born with a competitive spirit, it's just alive and well in sports. It is so entertaining to see both sides, both teams, just so into this game. And every play counts, and just the sweat that goes in, and the hammies that get pulled, and the quads that get stretched out further than they should go. But that was one thing I noticed, was just the competitiveness is a little amusing, because in a way it's like, this is just for fun, but it's also taken very seriously.
Well, I kind of find it amusing that we're so intense. Like we're just really intense. As if we have something to prove. I don't think we have anything to prove, to be honest with you. But then afterwards, we have to come together and pray after the game.
Absolutely.
It was so intense. People kind of, yelling at each other about taking different pitches, or, talking about the pitchers. There's always trash talking, and just the aspect of, I think, old man's softball. And then afterwards, hey, you guys want to come together and pray together? Oh yeah, let's do it. I just find it how quickly we go from like warrior to crippling off of the field. So, like that game you went to, you saw I pulled both quads.
He's been icing ever since.
I pulled both quads on the first at bat, and then I become the guy where I needed a pinch runner.
But you couldn't use them because somebody else was using
someone else got
because
to pitch
literally,
runner.
you guys, they are
These
the
rules.
Old
Yes,
Man baseball.
We were literally
softball.
losing men on this field in the first 2 innings because it's like we don't stretch. This goes back to our observational feedback about Disneyland. I made fun of the people, gently, the people at Disneyland who couldn't get out of the pool. Mm-hmm. But I said, that's kind of me. Like we don't stretch in America. We just don't stretch.
Right.
And then guess what happened? The guy who doesn't stretch pulls both quads running out of the batter's box, which he videotaped it, by the way.
Yeah.
And
third
step. Yeah, the third step. There was.
And you're a decent looking runner. I'm
a weird walker. You
are.
When I
but
power
you had
walk,
braces on your legs as a kid, so then I feel bad.
Forrest Gump style.
So now, like when I first noticed, like you're a weird walker, of course, then I felt a little bad. Like, oh, you actually had like structural, like.
Well, you won't walk with me a lot of times. When we go and do power walks, is that what we call it?
Because you have flinging arms.
I do.
My love of my life. Your arms fling, and it's kind of too much for me. So anyway, back to the game. So one thing that we had noticed, us wives, as we're watching, was it kind of plays with your brain, because you either go to a professional game or your kids' games. But here you are watching grown people play an amateur game. Like, it's a very weird feeling where you're not at a kid game, but you're not at a professional game, but these are adults playing. It's a very weird thing, but then also there's more action than at your kids' game, because these guys can hit and catch and throw. So it is actually really fun, but it is this weird feeling of grown men playing, but you're not at a professional game. It's a weird thing it does to your brain.
It's a grown-up Lily game because we have so many errors. It's so bad. But
It's actually, honestly though, like it is so fun. The kids are playing in the background. You guys are playing on the field. Us wives are cheering you on the bleachers, half watching, pretty much talking the whole time. And it just was this small town feel. Is what I got from it was just guys coming together, creating a relationship through playing sport. Like it really is a cool place to be on a Sunday late afternoon.
well, and this is a perfect example that for men, experiential creates intimacy. Like these, I don't know, 11 guys who I really only met 2 of them before. We can't just go out for coffee and talk be our intimacy. Like it just doesn't happen. But you bring a bunch of guys together to jump in the trenches of old man softball.
Mm-hmm.
We are instantly connected. We instantly know each other. We instantly are
high-fiving, giving hugs, yeah.
Yes, we are. Man, we are like cheering each other on, and we're in it together, right? It's just we're in battle, and the best part about it too. Well, to finish that thought it just shows for guys we need experiences and things like exercises to come together to know each other. But then comes the aspect of you have to choose a nickname for the back of your jersey. And some of these guys' nicknames, I don't know. You saw the nicknames.
Well, there's one that's a little inappropriate, but it's missing the other half, so it's not too bad.
I know what you're talking about. We're not going to say it because we know we have. No.
Some are just random, but can you tell the crowd what your name is?
Joe. Just Joe.
But there was supposed to be a period at the end.
Yes, because I'm all business is why. I get in the zone.
Yep.
When I play sports, I'm very competitive. I hate losing. And if I have 2 pulled quads, I refuse to get out of the game.
Hey, you guys won both games.
Destroy them.
You did great. Anyway, it's fun. Old man softball, and Joe's learning that he needs to stretch his body morning and night. This is actually an announcement to everybody out there listening. You need to stretch, okay? Start stretching.
Now back to the show.
Something else that I was really processing and talking about with my therapist was the idea of constantly feeling like I am apologizing for my kids and almost presenting the situation first to let them know, my friends know, I'm aware my kid is weird in this area, or I'm aware my kid doesn't do this, or putting labels on my kids because I'm so afraid of them just walking into a situation, just being who they are. I'm constantly apologizing for them, I realized, and was trying to really process with her, like, why do I do that? I don't know if anyone else struggles with that. You go on a play date or, whatever it is, and you're like, oh yeah, my kid struggles with it. You can't just let them be who they are. And I think for me, it stems back down to that. I feel that about my own self. So I'm always constantly making sure everybody knows my diagnosis and labels in case I do something weird. Because for some reason, I think I'm not going to be seen, loved, and accepted for just period who I am. Or I want people to know I'm self-aware. I know I'm weird, And so that's something that I have to stop doing as a parent and just let people figure out who my kids are and stop apologizing for who they are or being embarrassed or afraid of these weird quirks they have, because that is the way they were made and created, and they might take a little longer to be comfortable in a situation, and that's okay. I don't know if anyone else struggles with that. Do you have any kind of like input or advice on how to navigate that, Joe?
Well, I think I want to add on to that real quick is the concept in which we're such in that label making culture right now because psychology has become very popular. I remember in grad school, we had to take a psychopharmacology. No, that's for meds. We had to take psychopathology.
There we go.
Class. Maybe I might need meds right now based on what we're talking about. And so, psychopathology class, which is basically you take a year class learning all the diagnosis, how to diagnose, what to look for, and then you have to do different case studies, whatever. It is what it is. And so I remember at the end of this class that you had to take for a year, that the professor is teaching us about diagnosis, all the codes, all that kind of stuff, comes in at the end of the class, at the end of the year, he goes, And by the way, I don't diagnose clients, and I suggest you don't either. And it's like, what? Because we're just learning about how important diagnosing is. And he starts talking about how diagnosing clients can put a label on them that they could become something that they wouldn't have become unless they were put a label by someone in power, like a doctor, or therapist, or psychologist, or whatever it may be. And labeling them in many ways can stunt their growth, in which that, you put a name to it, and the name puts, can stamp their heart or stamp their character in so many ways, in all the wrong ways. And so he made this really interesting case. And I know there's other people within the profession that really believe in diagnosing not being, something that could be more of a hindrance than a help, or a curse than a blessing. And maybe that's something we got to talk more about and go deeply about that. But I think when it comes to the aspect of over labeling, I'm thinking about with our young kids, we made a mistake by making excuses for them before he or she even had a chance to make an opportunity to be known for who they want to be known for. And then we got thinking about the aspect of they still have 18 to 17 years of brain growth. Who they are is nowhere close to who they are today, and to allow that room. But it goes back to is the aspect of over-identifying, feeling anxious about their actions and behaviors and choices, and really just triggering us is what we're talking about, which is really can be hard, because then they hear words from us, certain adjectives that can really be labeling for them that they might never forget. And it's kind of like what persists, resists, it's kind of the aspect in which we try to persist all these great characters and be persistent in it, and they start resisting it, and they take on something that we don't want them to take on. So sometimes the aspect of, I remember my mom used to say this, you gotta let your kids, you gotta let them know what they need to know, right? You gotta let them grow, like let them make mistakes, but you also gotta let them go, be on their own. And that even at younger ages, when it comes to like these play dates or going to school and or trying different things, and I think let them know, let them go, let them grow is a great concept of parenting at really any age, right? And I also give formulate all three of those in any ways you want to for whatever age the kids are. But it is the concept of recognizing our words can either be blessings or curses for them. And to see it as that, and to recognize that even labeling them and saying certain things, and by the way, we're pretty honest. We call things what they are, in terms of if the person is anxious, we call it anxiety. We don't say like butterflies or things like that. If there's sadness, we call it sadness. Just like when it comes like, for example, like body parts, we call body parts what they are. We don't call them, nicknames or kid names, what it may be, And so we really believe in that, but be careful to put that as a mark of their character as the person.
Definitely. And I've noticed now that our kids are getting older, they truly hear everything we say. I think I've said this on here before, but, our oldest has even told me, I hear everything you say, Mom. And it's true. Like there are these little people in the background that we don't think are listening to us, but they are. So whether we're talking about them or even somebody else, especially when we're talking about these adjectives that define a person. So in our family, there's a lot of shyness, right? There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of worry. There is a lot of anxiety now from all of that. And those words have been said and have been caught by them. And so we're really trying now to let go. Well, I am specifically, I think I struggle a little more than you do in this. Like you're always like, why do you let this affect you so much? Like you're so much better at letting it go, and it's okay. You know that there's so much more growth to be done, and I guess I do too, but this is where I have to be more self-aware and realize I'm over-identifying and let go and just let my kid be who they are, where I'm not explaining their behavior in front of other people or justifying it, which there is so much more development in our kids. Like who they are right now is not going to be who they are when they're 25. Obviously, they're the same person, but they have so much growing, so much developing. So to really lean into their strengths and help strengthen their weaknesses and come alongside them and remind ourselves that we're parenting them to help them as a human, not because we're afraid of looking a certain way in front of people, or you're a therapist and we teach on this. And so I think there's that fear too always is like, well, what if our kid doesn't look a certain way? Well, listen, we can only use the tools that we can and be the best parents we can be. They're still who they are. We could harp all day long on all the things we messed up, all the mistakes we made in the past, whether you have a 1-year-old, a 10-year-old, or a 19-year-old. But what I was reminded yesterday is today and forward is what matters. Today and forward. So stop looking and maybe obviously process what maybe you did wrong so you can fix that in the coming days, weeks, months, years. But we've got to let go of the things that we've done wrong in the ways that we think our kids are struggling, and just pick up where right now and move forward to encourage them. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, this is why they're acting like this, because I didn't do this enough, or we did this, or whatever it is. And just to encourage us as parents that no, we cannot look at that. We've got to move forward, or we're going to get stuck and we're going to project that onto our kids.
Thank you for listening to the Reset Podcast. We're so glad that you joined us. If you enjoyed this episode, would you take a moment to leave us a review and maybe even hit that subscribe or follow button? Also, pay it forward by sharing this podcast with a friend. For free resources and to learn more about coaching for individuals, athletes, couples, and teams, go to theresetgroup.com. And we would love to connect with you on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok @The Reset Group. See you soon.